Had a few technical difficulties with this video. I apologize for the audio and some of it because I had the heater going in the background because I'm trying not to freeze to death. So it's a little bit of background noise. I had to reshoot the intro because my audio was gone. The only thing I did right before where this video starts with me taking the intake off was just taking the air cleaner off. And then we go from there to taking the bell housing, clutch and flywheel. I did not film taking the flywheel off, but that's just a ring of bolts, but did take the clutch and the bell housing off. Then I went to the front of the engine, got the radiator and the fan assembly out, got hung up on the power steering pump. That's where this video ends. So enjoy. Sorry about the audio. Right now we can start unbolting the manifold. I usually always start with the 2 bolts in the back because they're the hardest two to get to. And if you're also still running a PCV system, you'll have some lines going in here between the valves. Okay, your 2 back manifold bolts. You don't have enough room between the manifold and the cowling to lift them up and get them out of there, so they'll stay in there until we get the manifold out. So what I normally do is take a piece of masking tape, I'll lift the bolt up to where it won't drop down and hang up on the way out. I'll put a little masking tape around it just to hold it in place. Makes it a little easier to get it in and out. The rest of the bolts I normally just take care of with my little impact. Usually go in a circle ending in the middle to where it releases the pressure on the manifold from instant tip. Go ahead and pull all the rest of the bolts out. Now lift it up, slide it forward just a little bit. You can reach in behind, you've got a wire connector for your map sensor. Undo it, and you also have a small vacuum line. Pull it up. Now, pull it forward a little more. Work your brake booster line out. And the manifold's ready to come on. There's your map sensor. Underneath it is the little nipple where the vacuum line was on there. This right here is the vacuum line. Got an elbow, so just pull it off like that. Now back here at the back, you have your small plug here for your oil pressure switch. Undo the wire there. And then you have another plug on this hand position sensor. And undo it. Now, follow this line over. These are for your knock sensors. Another connector here. Undo it. Along with that, you also have a ground wire here on the back of the cylinder head. We'll get in here in a second. I think what I'm going to do, remember the engine is tilted backwards because we were taking out the drive line. So I'm going to go back under with the jack and level it back out, and that will let me get back in here to the bell housing bolts. Now we've got more room to reach around back in here. Hey, there's the bolt for your grounding wire there. There was a 15 millimeter. Part of the deal with this factory setup is they've got these bell housing bolts holding a lot of this wiring. So it's kind of in the way. And some of that stuff may get relocated by the time I put it back together. But I still have room to get back in there. Those should be 13 millimeter bolts. So I'm going to remove what I can reach from up here. And then we'll head back down. And like I said, nothing on this car was hard to get to. And so far that has been the case. These are probably the hardest things I've ran into so far, just because they've got this dang wiring harness all mounted onto these bolts. It's just in the way. Bad. So, and some of these you may be able to get easier from below. Just when you're working on yours, look at it and see what you think's easiest. I'm just grabbing what I can get from the top right now. Mostly because the dang floor's cold. And I fully intend to reroute a lot of this wire. Do away with some of these brackets. Because this stuff is on there in the way that it's on there, just to make it easier when they assemble it at the back. It can be done other ways that are easier for me. And there's a certain amount of this wiring that's just going to get deleted because the stuff I've taken off. And while you might be able to pull this with the bell housing attached, you still have to take these bolts out because they are hooked to the wiring. This bolt right here would be real easy to get to. It's just absolutely surrounded by wiring. I may go back underneath for this one. I can't get it in focus, but there's a bolt right up in here that is just totally surrounded by a bracket and the wiring harness. So I'm going to try to cut the wiring, or cut the zip ties holding the harness, try to bend the bracket out of the way so I can get to the bolts. But that is one of the troublesome bolts. There's the bolt that was giving me trouble. See that bracket? This piece that went from one bolt to another. That was over, totally covering that bolt head. And I mean, that bracket will not go back in there. I will reroute, move stuff however I need it. So, while this is more difficult the first time, when it goes back together, and anytime I've got to take it apart in the future, it will be much easier. But yeah, cut the wire harness. The wiring harness was zip tied right in here. So I cut that loose, pushed the wiring harness, and then bent that back. And now I've got full access to the bolts. I think before I get in there and tackle those upper bell housing bolts, I'm going to go ahead and take this lower piece off. That's your two main bolts here, and then a ring of, I think those are 10mm bolts around the side, and then this bottom cover will come off. These two bolts, you can leave those in there. If you've got more stock exhaust, those will be hooked to a hanger that went to the exhaust. Mine doesn't use that anymore, so the bolts are just in there as a filler to keep dirt out. Alright, we got the lower cover off. And in case you weren't aware, this is how, if you were just putting a new clutch, flywheel and stuff in, you don't have to take the full bell housing off, just the bottom. It will all slide out through the bottom. You got to rotate the engine around to get to the pressure plate bolts. But you get the pressure plate off and the clutch disc, you can go up through the center and take your flywheel off. But it makes it pretty handy that you don't have to mess with the whole bell housing to just do a clutch job. Those two pain in the butt bolts are out. This thing going bye-bye. What I ended up having to do was reach up in there with a wobble and lots of flexy stuff, and was managed to break it free with the 3/8 inch stuff, but there wasn't enough room to crank the bolt out with that. So once I got it broke free with 3/8, I switched to 1/4 inch extension and wobble, and then I could get it brought out. So now I think there's still a bolt or two on this side, and then we should be able to get the bell housing down. Yeah, I think she's ready to come down. Or at least she's popped loose from the back of the motor. It will come out. I wasn't sure. And I would say that once I delete a few things and move a couple of things, it will go back in a lot easier. Just, you want to do it this way, work it up and down a little bit, the back of the motor. And it will eventually come out. Okay, we're still sitting on the jack stand. And we're not damaging the firewall at all. So now let's roll this around. We'll take the pressure plate and the flywheel off. Okay, we're working on the pressure plate bolts now. 6 of those around the outsides. You need to roll it around, loosen them up a little bit at a time, working your way around. That way you don't bend your pressure plate. You can use a screwdriver on this bolt. I built a little deal out of 3 flywheel teeth, piece of rod and a hole in it, and I can work it around like this. Screwdriver works too. So we'll just keep doing that till we get all the flywheel or all the pressure plate bolts out and set that out of the way. I gotta say, I'm kind of impressed. This is a Luke or Luck or LUK clutch pressure plate flywheel setup. It's LS6. It's got 70,000 miles on it. I put it in. Besides a little bit of heat checking right around that side there, this thing looks like new. And I was really planning on changing. I was really planning on changing all this to a lighter weight setup because the LS6 setup is pretty heavy. So right now I'm not sure what I'm going to do. Maybe I could find a lightweight LS6 flywheel. Yeah, look at that flywheel. Little bit around the outer edge. That thing looks sweet. I'm used to taking them out, especially after I've been abusing them, and they look like, they're all heat checked, cracked, kind of a mess. This one's big enough that it was handling it no problem. Okay, while we're poking around on this side of the engine, the driver's side, got a ground plug there, and you've also got your, got your oil pressure switch. Might as well go ahead and get that disconnected while you're down here. I figured while I was working on other stuff, I might as well get the coolant draining. And if you've got the factory radiator or factory style, it's real nice to drain. Comes out the centering pin there right straight into the bucket. Okay, I pulled the starter wires. You've got the 2 large lugs that go to the big post on there. Then you have the small one that is the actual triggers the starter. Get those out of the way, and 2 bolts on the bottom, the starter will come out. Now back under the car, you have 2 bolts for the starter, this one here, and then one up in that hole there that's a shorter one. Take those both out, then the starter will come out. Alright, now that the starter is out of the way, you have a wire here. That one there is your oil level sensor. Undo it. Right there is your crank position sensor, which was behind the starter. And then up there, I can't reach it from there. Where'd it go? Right there. There's the bolt, another ground wire. Take it loose. The oil level switch is a little bit of a pain because your retainer clip that's sticking out on the side is down in this hole. Now, the back of this is cut out, so you can reach in with a pick like this, or a hook would even probably work good, and pop it up like that and pull it out. Alright, everything down in there is now disconnected. There's the grounding wire. It was a 15mm bolt. It was easier to get from the top, so I just came up here. The starter bolts were 13. And see how nasty all that wire loom and everything is there. That's some stuff that I'm going to fix while we got this out. It's just age and the heat from the headers. So right now, let's pull out the wiring harness for the knock sensors. Gently pop these caps up, shove the wire back down through, and that gives you access to the plug down in the hole. There we go. There we go. Okay, these are kind of got to be squeeze together like that to get them to pop free. So I put my little finger on one side and then push the other side with the screwdriver. and got it come about. And of course, even being gentle, part of the knock sensor broke, and part of the clip. And actually on my Yukon, when I did these, I just took the wire and seemed like I soldered the wire straight on to the knock sensor. That, or I used some other kind of plug. But we'll figure that out when we go back together. But yeah, they're normally really brittle from being inside with all the heat. In order to get the knock sensors out, you'll need a 7/8 deep well socket. I've already broken free with the ratchets, so buzz them on out with a little impact. And there are your knock sensors. That's the top there, that plastic that it clips on, that gets brittle and breaks. With that stop in the center is your electrical connection, so you can hook onto it, soldered, or however you want to do it if you want to reuse these or get new ones. Now I'm going to go ahead and take off the valley cover here, because that's where the lift plate I'm using hooks up. They are 10mm bolts. We'll get them broke free and then buzz them the rest of the way out. And here's the lifting plate that's right back down where the valley cover is. I'm sure putting all the bolts in is probably a little overkill compared to some of the stuff I've seen to pull motors, but we're going to go ahead and stick them all back in there, keep them all together, and I'm just OCD like that. Now we've got a nice safe place to hook on with the cherry picker to lift it up. Different spots if you need to angle. Oh, I had to turn the heat off. It was finally starting to get kind of hot in here. What next? I've got to undo the cooling system and the front accessories like the air conditioner. I'll go ahead and take out the fan assembly and the radiator just to get that out of the way. And I'm sure I'll want to clean the radiator, clean the condenser. So let's take out the 4 10mm bolts that hold the radiator down. And the cooling system is drained down. So I'll pop that top radiator hose off and then this crossover tube here. Look at the bugs. Since it's been several years since I bought this car, and I put all new belts and hoses on it then, I'd say this would be a good time to do it again. It's been like 5 years. That's it. Okay, the steam line there is 10mm bolts. Need a long deep well socket for those. That up out of the way. And I think I'll slip under the front here and undo the zip ties holding the wires to the fans so we can lift those up. And down there, all the wiring is undone from the fans. There's 2 plugs and then a bunch of zip ties holding it to the fan. If you've still got ABS, you've got a unit over there with some wiring to it that goes to the fan, so you'll have to take that loose. So now I'm ready for hose there, and the lower radiator hose. We'll take it out. Well, the bottom hose is out. So far, I've not made a very big mess under the car. Well, if you're familiar with these, the stock radiator, well, the aftermarket radiators do the same thing, but they have clips on them. The fan assembly clips into the back side of the radiator. The condenser clips into the front side. I'm going to leave the fan assembly on the radiator The condenser, I pulled it out of its clips and just set it down on the radiator support. So let's see if I can pull this up out of here. Of course, as usual, got some wiring in the way. What else? Oh, the clips are just grabbing. Oh. Not too bad. Just a couple of little splats down there, nothing serious. So now we can get to the front of the engine. Any accessories we want to take off there, we can. Well, I think I'm going to wind down this video. I finally got the power steering reservoir off. The way it's put together has the line coming out the bottom and then the small line coming out the side, and it snaps into this bracket. Well, you can't get that bolt out there to get the bracket off with the reservoir on the bracket, which the reservoir is supposed to slide off the bracket, but it also has to slide off that lower hose. Lower hose was all original, and it was welded to that little tank. So it was just a pain to get off there. Finally got that cut. I mean, I would obviously replace that hose anyway while I'm in here. But the other problem I've got is the bolts that hold the power steering pump on are behind the pulley, which is pretty normal on these GMs. And the bolts to get the bracket off the engine are behind the pulley too. So you normally take the pulley off. And I have the proper tool to take the pulley off, but that sucker's on there and it broke the lip. And now I'm actually starting to make a mess. I got to go see if I can get a new pulley. And if I can, I'll just cut this one with an angle grinder, get the pulley out of there. We'll get a new pulley. Once we get it all out of there, I can get the deal on the workbench. Then I can get the hub off. That'll get that bracket off. But I think for right now, I'm going to stop. Got some other stuff to do. I went in and did a little research on that pulley. No big deal that it broke. It's a plastic pulley that's molded onto a steel hub that is pressed onto there. And they are known to break. They're not the best. Either they come off or they break like mine did and are a real serious pain to get off. So I come out tomorrow. I will cut the old one off. I'll cut around the hub to where we can get behind it and get the pump off. And then when I get time, I'll figure out a way to get the rest of the hub off. There was one guy that actually had to pull the shaft completely out of the pump, put that shaft with that little hub in a lathe and cut that hub off because it was on there so tight. So I'll get the parts for the power steering, new pulley, and you want to use a C6 pulley because they actually are all metal and they have spokes coming out. So and maybe you can get to the bolts behind it through the spokes. I've seen something like that. So that will be a major improvement. So I'll just get all the parts ordered for that. And then tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be able to get the rest of the accessories off and get the engine out of there. Until then, thanks for watching. See you on the next one.